Hi, my name is Viet Vu, a Senior Economist at the Brookfield Institute for Innovation and Entrepreneurship. The Brookfield Institute for Innovation and Entrepreneurship, housed within Ryerson University, is a nonpartisan think tank that focuses on understanding trends and issues related to the innovation economy. And we are really excited to be one of the community partners for QueerTech. And I'm humbled and excited today to be able to chat with you as the speaker for QueerTech's annual job fair. I want to imagine yourself at a tech conference, watching a presentation by a company called Spectrum as they introduce a new product, being a company that focuses on creating technologies for GSD or gender and sexually diverse people. They introduce you to Agwe. Agwe is a cute person that you met at a coffee shop earlier that day. And you two had hit it off in a conversation, ultimately to find out that Agwe is also attending the same concert you are going to this weekend. You exchange numbers and agree to meet at the concert, and you wonder if Agwe could be romantically interested in someone of your gender. The company then introduces Gator, a revolutionary app that purports to be able to predict Agwe's sexual preferences just by submitting a photo of them. Any photo. It could be Agwe's LinkedIn profile, it could be their Twitter profile. And using state-of-the-art machine learning technology, the company claims that this product will be a revolutionary product for the GSD community. In my last year of university at the University of British Columbia, I was searching for a place to live in Vancouver. I went and visited this one property, had a very nice conversation with a landlord, and the landlord ended up offering me the place the day after. In the phone conversation, though, he said, "Oh, there's one last question that we need to ask you. Are you gay?" Being a bi man, I truthfully answered, no, I wasn't. And it turns out that he was asking this because there was another tenant in that building that was not comfortable with having a queer person present, and that he had noticed some red flags, namely the fact that I mentioned that I had been at a pride parade in Vancouver earlier that day. Imagine what the landlord would be able to do had he had access to technology like Gator. In 2013, I came up to my parents, and the experience perhaps still scars me to this day. They threatened to disown me, and thankfully, I was in a financially independent position with an amazing support network around me. But imagine what would have happened if my parents had access to this technology and outed me before I was ready to do so. Is this technology real, or is it fiction? That's some of the thoughts that I want to approach in today's conversation about queer and trans tech workers in Canada. Now, the technology I just showed you is obviously not real, but the actual theory behind it may be real. In 2017, researchers published this paper that purported to use deep neural network to guess a person's sexual orientation just from their photo. Now, this research was conducted on faces of white men who showed up in dating profiles as being interested in men. So the algorithm would probably be very confused by someone at my face. But these technologies are purported to be created regardless of how well it actually works. Just 2 years ago, in Europe's one of the largest conferences in the world on machine learning, a paper was presented that again was claimed that just using someone's voice, they can reconstruct that person's face. There are obvious problems with this, including issues with misgendering someone just from the tone or deepness of their voice, to racially profiling someone for someone's accent. But the truth is, technologies about GSD people are being created every day in all industries. It could be as innocuous as a sign-up form that asks for someone's gender that may only offer binary choices between men and women. And just like that, some of these technologies can serve to hurt members of our community. We know, though, that more diverse teams are more likely to create more inclusive technologies. If there were queer people who have experienced those kinds of violence sitting in the product team when Spectrum was designing Gator, perhaps they would have raised a concern. They would have raised flags about how this technology could be misused, about how guessing someone's orientation from the way they look is ultimately reductive and maybe not actually valid after all. So it's worth asking, how many gender and sexually diverse, or GSD people, actually work in tech? Is the problem in the fact that there aren't enough of us who are working in the tech industry? It turns out that answering this question isn't simple, because Canada as a country does not have a consistent way to measure sexual orientation and gender identity. But through some assumptions, through whatever data that we have, it turns out that representation is not the biggest issue here. About 43,000 out of 1 million tech workers in Canada likely belong to the GSD community, which is about the number you would expect from the population distribution, where about 3 to 5% of the general population belonging to this community. The problem is somewhere different. In 2018, an organization in Canada conducted a survey of LGBTQ2 plus people in Canada, and what they found was harrowing. 41% of the survey respondents expressed concerns or questioned an organization's commitment to queer rights, even after they have done research on those companies. 22%, or 1 in 5, knew or felt that they were going to be discriminated just on the basis of how they look, on how they express their gender. Ultimately, these are not problems for the job seekers or the employees to solve. It is something that companies like yourselves who have graciously accepted to participate in today's job fair, who have really made this commitment to invest in equity, inclusion, and diversity at your workplaces, can actually do and address this issue. So what can you do? You could start by listening. And this may sound like a funny thing, but I don't mean in holding listening sessions and engaging conversations with your GSD employees, even though those are important as well. I mean plugging yourself into the discourse on this, because the moment you do, you'll realize that a lot of the things that the community is asking you to implement is not radical after all. It could be as simple as listing your commitment on LGBTQ plus community on job postings that you post online. It could also be as simple as indicating your pronouns during the interview process, just to signal the fact that, yes, we know that queer people exist and we want you to work here. It could be also as simple as coming up with a framework to deal with harassments and discriminations and bias at your workplaces, because ultimately, what many of us are asking for is for your companies to create an environment that allows queer people, that allows GSD people to showcase all of our talents in helping you create the best product as can be designed. And through this journey, we don't expect you to know everything. We know that some of these topics can be new to you, then that's okay. But that's why diversity consultants, that's why equity consultants exist. That's why abundance of resources on the internet and others exist. Utilize it. Hire the diversity consultants. Pay them and remunerate them fairly. And don't just stop at inviting them for a single session on sensitivity training or implicit bias training. Actually invest in the work allowing them to understand your organization and identify the places where change can be made. And we know as well that this process is likely not going to go perfectly, that mistakes are bound to be made. Be open about it. Be transparent about it. Don't lull yourself into thinking that these kinds of things don't happen here. Don't try to design the perfect processes, the perfect system that will weed out all forms of discrimination. You'd be surprised at how receptive many people in the community are to mistakes that are made in earnest. Mistakes that are made not because obvious flags from the community were ignored, but mistakes were made because you really did try to do the right thing. But it didn't happen to be that way. As long as you're transparent about it and commit to learning along this journey, you've already made a huge stride. And finally, don't obsess over metrics. Metrics can be important. Metrics can be useful. For example, in understanding pay disparity that might exist at your company, or in understanding representation issues that takes place in your organization. But obsessing over metrics means that you might miss some things you can't measure, important things. Because while some things are measurable, many things aren't. Today, you really have an exciting opportunity, because not only do you get to showcase your company to these talents, that you get to find some of the best talent in industry, it is also a chance for you to understand what the best talent in industry want from a work environment. Because ultimately, by creating an equitable work environment, you're allowing these queer employees, these GSD employees, to utilize their talent to the fullest in creating the best product as can be created that ultimately benefit you. And so ask questions, engage your prospective employees earnestly, because we're all working towards one goal of making sure that the best talent ends up working for the best company. Thank you.